All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Training for Hiking live Q&A. My name is Rowan Smith, and today I'm answering your questions around training for hiking. As always, the way these streams work is if anyone is watching live and does have any particular questions, you can jump on in, post up your questions in the chat. I'm more than happy to help. Beyond that, I've had a few questions that have been sent in prior to this, which I want to cover today, which I'll be working through. And essentially, the topics we're going to be covering today is we're going to go over the idea around swapping between boots and shoes on different adventures. We're going to talk a little bit about nutrition in the final period before a big adventure. We're going to talk a little bit about alcohol swaps and also balancing out weight loss and energy. So, with that being said, I'm going to jump into the first question. And this was a question not directed specifically towards this Q&A. It came from a client when we were having a private conversation, but I thought it was definitely worthwhile covering because I get the general vibe of this question quite a lot. And the specific question was, I'd always thought that the general idea was wearing boots for rocky, uneven ground, and I should wear shoes for more like flatter stretches. I think she meant flatter stretches there. And I swap back and forth between both of delivering both of these depending on the trail. But it seems from what I've been learning that this will put you a little bit more risk of injury if you're swapping back and forth. I'm just asking if this is the case. And realistically, when it comes down to this, there are a million and one different ways you can approach your footwear on the trail. And there are a million and one different ways you can approach what you wear for different types of adventures. As a general top rule of thumb, one thing we always want to keep in mind when we're looking at this topic is just being aware that the body is a very, very adaptable and resilient thing in the sense that the body in majority of situations, if it is applied a specific stress, or if it is applied a specific, stimulus, or if it is applied a specific challenge, it will over time adapt to that to make that challenge a little bit more comfortable, to make that challenge a little bit more doable. And in the case of footwear, regardless of what type of footwear we wear, whether it's boots, shoes, flip flops, Crocs, high heels, whatever it may be, the body can and will adapt to that. The problem is that adaptations can take quite a while. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen after a week. It doesn't have to happen after 2 or 3 or even 4 weeks. It can be a bit of a longer process for a lot of people. And sometimes if we can fall into this situation where technically a lot of people might be like, okay, rougher trail, I'm going to wear my boots on a rocky, uneven terrain, but on the flatter sections, I'm going to wear shoes. Sometimes in some people's situations, just swapping between the footwear too regularly is just too much. And the body just doesn't get enough consistent stimulus and consistent challenge for it to actually adapt to one pair of footwear. So therefore, it's always kind of thinking this footwear is sort of new. It's not like quite as extreme as that, but it's sort of the idea. If we want something to our body to adapt to something, we want consistent exposure to it. And some people can get away with this perfectly fine. They can change footwear every single week, not a big deal. But if you do find yourself in a situation where you are changing quite a bit and you do feel like you're almost always struggling, maybe in your particular situation, you may need a little less variance here. You may need a little bit more consistency, and you may just need to give your feet and your ankles a better chance to truly adapt to that one thing. So instead of wearing something for 2 weeks and another 2 weeks, try to get like 8 weeks in a row wearing the same footwear. What I typically recommend in this situation is if you're tossing up between boots or shoes or mid-cut boots or whatever it may be, just ask yourself the question of all the types of footwear that I wear, what is the most comfortable for me? That's it. What do you feel like is most comfortable? Don't even worry about support structures. Don't even worry about different terrain. Ask yourself what is most comfortable. And then depending on that, then I would sort of lean towards whatever's most comfortable. And then essentially you just get more exposure to that particular thing. You go out and do the majority of the hiking wearing that particular thing. And over time, the feet will have a better chance of adapting to it. Now, the only follow-up on this, and it is an important note, if you have been swapping between boots for rocky and uneven terrain, and you've been on shoes on flatter sections, but you realize that, you know what, actually, I quite like the shoes, and I want to wear that all the time. One thing you do need to be aware of is if you're swapping between starting wearing shoes on uneven terrain, you just need to take that gradually. Because as we said, adaptations can take time. Boots will give you external support. If we just throw ourselves straight in the deep end with rough terrain with lower support shoes, that can sometimes lead to a little bit of triggering. So if you are going to introduce lower support shoes on all of your hikes, and you've been swapping between, just gradually introduce one rougher terrain. Don't just go straight into a heavy hike or whatever it may be, but start on easier terrain, introduce a bit of rougher, introduce a bit of rougher. Or if you've got a super, super difficult hike coming up and you're like, actually, I've only made this decision 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe pull out the boots just for that. Give your body time to adapt to that. On top of that is if you are going down the lower support option, you definitely want to help support your legs to get ready for this. Because one thing that tends to happen is if we've been had a history of wearing higher support boots on rougher terrain, some of the stabilizing forces in the ankles may not be quite as strong as they could be. So we want to support this with our training. So if you're going down that route and lowering support of your shoes, make sure you're doing some calf and lower limb strengthening. So what I mean by that is, doing examples of, where's this video here? Doing things like lower limb strengthening could be doing some shin work, some tibialis anterior work. Calf strengthening could be doing just some general strength leg calf raises and also pairing it with some bent leg calf raises. So you're getting a good exposure to different areas. If anyone wants to check those videos out, I'll just pop it in chat and you can have a little look at that video. And also pairing it with some type of balance work as well. So you could do something like stop that music. Where you could be doing like around the world, where you're standing on one leg with your bare feet, standing on something that's slightly, not 100% supported, and just slowly passing something around. You can see the ankles working a lot there, challenge the balance and this and that. Anytime we're trying to build out ankle stability, this is typically a good idea, trying to pair lower limb strengthening, calf work, maybe a bit of other lower limb work, and also balance work. So long story short, if you are constantly changing between shoes and you never really feel like anything's fully comfortable, maybe lean towards one pair of footwear, get a bit more consistent exposure to that. And if you are going down towards lower support stuff, make sure you build it out with some specific ankle strengthening. So hopefully that answers that question there. Now, coming down, next question. I will say anyone who is watching live, does have any particular questions they want covered, if you want to plug up into chat, I'm more than happy to cover. So next question I had sent through, and this was another one actually came from a client who, what's going on? My YouTube is, hopefully it's all running. Not sure what is going on there. Anyway, I'll keep on going and hopefully it's all good. So yeah, next question came from talking about nutrition for a big adventure. And this was a specific client who was heading out on a big adventure in the next week or so. Um, And they were just asking, look, in the final week when we're going into our taper phase, when we're pulling back the training, taking a little bit easier, is there anything specifically I should be focusing on in regards to nutrition leading into this? And realistically, nutrition for your final week before an adventure, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be too crazy. The main priority that you want to be aiming for in your final week, that you want to think about, is just not getting sick. Getting sick before an adventure is so common because, more often than not, we get to this final week of training and we get to this point where we're like, hey, I've been training really, really hard, really, really pushing it. And then in the final week, I take my foot off the accelerator. I take it a little bit easier. I take it a bit more casually. I give my body a chance to recover and adapt. And more often than not, the body's like, hey, I'm having a rest. Now is the time to get sick. Happens so often. On top of that, we typically have a lot of stress when we're dealing with, the final week of preparations, when we're heading off before we go away, when we're finishing up work, saying goodbye to family, last minute organization. Stress tends to be high, and this can also contribute to the risk of being sick. So one thing we can do to support this is with our nutrition during this week is just making sure we're doing what we can to support our health. We're doing what we can to minimize the risk of you getting sick and helping now. And this doesn't have to be too complicated, but main things you want to think about is just make sure in the final week that you continue with healthy eating. You're still thinking about having well-rounded meals, having carbohydrates, having protein, having fat, making sure you have plenty of veggies through the week and making sure you stay hydrated. Really, really, really basic stuff, and it's not complicated at all, but we definitely want to stay on top of that. And it can go a really long. Um, Now, beyond that, what to keep in mind is in this week, typically before you head away, depending on how big the adventure is, we may be in the situation where we're just clearing out the fridge, clearing out the pantry. We may not want to be doing a huge amount of groceries. So even though this stuff is really, really basic, sometimes it can be a bit tricky to do because you're like, well, I'm just finishing off bits and pieces. Maybe I'm not getting a huge amount of veggies. Maybe I'm not getting a huge amount of like well-rounded meals. or whatever it is. So in these situations, what I'll probably recommend is if you're like, hey, I'm clearing out the fridge, just make sure you get some non-perishable options where you can build out whatever meals you have. If you're aware that, hey, I'm going away, I don't really want to buy meat or anything to fit it in the fridge, maybe just think, what can I get as a non-perishable protein option to complement whatever meals I'm having? Maybe get some cans of tuna, maybe get some protein powder, maybe get some protein bars, whatever it may be. Maybe I don't want to buy a bunch of veggies before I go away in case it goes off. So maybe get some frozen veggies, use that to complement your meals. Maybe I don't want to buy fruit, buy some frozen fruit, or whatever it may be. And just think, how can I hit these really basic health markers or health targets in a way we're here? And then finally, if you are in a situation where you're like, look, I'm completely cleared out my pantry and my fridge, and I'm just going to get takeout for the last couple of days, which is totally normal, and a lot of people do that, just make sure you keep in mind you're still trying to minimize the risk of getting sick. Definitely don't introduce anything that's new, like try a new restaurant that you've never tried before, or try a new cuisine the day before your trip, just in case the stomach doesn't like it. Don't go to your favorite restaurant. Like if you go to a get takeout and you're like, hey, I really love this, but it sometimes gives me a bit of funny stomach, or I've seen that and it's a bit dirty, but I love it anyway. Maybe don't get that type of stuff, in the last week before you go, just in case. And also, lean towards options which may be slightly healthier. In the sense, if you're getting, say, pizza, maybe don't just get a cheese pizza, but maybe get a pizza that has some veggies on it. Maybe get a pizza that has some protein on, or whatever it may be. It's simple stuff, but realistically, anything you can think of to keep you healthy and avoid getting sick during this time, it really can go a long way. So if you're last week out before a trip, while you're going through that taper period, just don't get sick. Main priority, really, really, really do help. As we're going through, I hope the stream's coming through okay. My internet is being a little bit weird. I think they might be doing some work on it or something like that. So if people are getting a little bit of a delayed or anything like that, sorry about that. Hope it's coming through okay. So, as I sort of said, if anyone watching live does have any particular questions that they would like me to cover, feel free to plug it into chat and I'm happy to help. So the next topic I'm going to cover is alcohol swaps. And, this is a situation that comes up for a lot of people. And, this can be really, really tricky. And it's just a question I got just this morning, actually. And in this particular situation, this person was saying, look, I had a friend came with their family, and we ended up last week, and we ended up having quite a few drinks. This is something that I don't really want to do until my big adventure goal is achieved. Is there any advice you could give to navigate this, especially around when everyone around me is drinking? Really, really common situation. This type of thing will come up when we're training for a big goal, when we're training for, just weight loss, general health, or whatever it may be. Navigating the whole idea of social drinking can be really, 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 really tricky. So there's a few ideas you can kind of look at. Now, at a top level, if you do have a specific endpoint goal, a big adventure you're training for, one thing that can often be doable, and it may not be doable in everyday life, but if you do have a particular endpoint, sometimes you can just say, you know what, for the next 4 months, I'm not drinking until I'm going to do this big adventure. And you can tell your friends, you can tell your family, in all honesty, I'm not drinking leading to this because I want to do everything we can. This conversation can often be easier to navigate if you do have a big goal, and you can sort of link it because people aren't super understanding quite often. As much as it's not amazing, but sometimes like, oh, they just have a drink. But if you say I'm not drinking because I'm training for this goal, sometimes that can help. Whether or not you want to go down that, completely up to you. If this is not super realistic and you're like, hey, I'm not completely giving up alcohol, or maybe I don't want to have that conversation, or whatever it may be, there are a few things you can kind of do pre and during your drinking sessions, or your socializing, whatever it may be, to help navigate it. Ultimately, if you're training for a big goal, the way we want to think about this is we want to make sure we're doing everything we can. That even if we're going out for drinks, even if we're having, a social occasion, we're minimizing the impact it will have on our training through the week, and we're minimizing any other impact it may have. So a few simple things you can do before and after these. Number one, eat before you're going out. If you're aware that you're going out for social drinks, two things that can often happen. Number one is if we go to drink at night, we haven't had something a week for a while. When we're hungry, we tend to drink more. Sometimes the body can get thirst and hunger signals a little bit mixed. This can often, end up you just wanting to have smash a few drinks when you first get in. So eat something before you go out. Make sure you're not hungry when you're starting. Can go a long way. Number two, quite often, is when we go out, we may, have a couple of drinks. We may be in a situation where there may not be a few great food options out there. They may not, the options we take for eating when we've been drinking may not fully align with our training goals. So having something to eat before you go out, where you fill yourself up a little bit more, when you actually get to dinner, you may make better decisions. You may, instead of getting that fully nasty, greasy burger, you may get a burger which isn't quite as nasty, something like that. But eating something before you go out can go a long way. On top of that, just get things ready for you for when you do get home that night. Make sure you have a water bottle ready. Make sure you've got some electrolytes laid out. That can definitely help you recover and feel better the next day. Same thing as have something ready to eat, ready for you when you get home. If you get home and you're starving and you're the type of person who likes to eat in that situation, instead of you ordering more food or putting on something greasy, have something ready to eat. Have it ready there. Just a bit of pre-planning. And to take that a step further, if you're the type of person who wakes up in the morning and you're like, well, I had a few drinks and I'm gonna really feel like something greasy in the morning, whatever it may be, have a breakfast option ready for you. Have like, make up a smoothie before you go to bed, or I don't know, whatever. But just have those things ready so it's not, going to impact you so much. And then during, there's a couple of different things you can kind of look at. Typically, if you're out socializing, having drinks, whatever it may be, really, really simple thing. It's just looking at better options as opposed to all or nothing if that's not realistic. Just sort of look at what you typically drink and think, what can I do which may not impact me quite as much? What will still give me the benefits of socializing with my friend, having a good time, maybe enjoying the taste of what I enjoy, but it may be a little bit better. So, for example, if you love the old gin and tonic and that's a big thing for you, maybe instead of having a gin and tonics, you'll have a gin and soda. Soda has a lot less sugar than tonics. Soda will probably hydrate you a little bit more than tonics and can be good. And you can go with that and say, if I'm going to have 4 gin and tonics versus 4 gin and sodas, that's probably significantly better. This also gives you the option that, like, if you are going out with a friend who is a pretty heavy drinker, and you're like, "Hey, I've actually had 2 gin and sodas. I'm a little bit over it. I'm kind of ready to finish up drinking, but my friend's really pushing it." Then you can even go down the situation where you just start getting sodas. Talk to the bartender and say, "Hey, when I order a gin and soda, do you mind just bringing me a soda?" A lot of people do that. Can be a really effective thing. Still looks like you're drinking, but you're in control. Very, very simple thing, but can go a long way. I had a trainer that I used to work with, that we used to go out and we used to, in party days, used to drink quite a bit. We used to go down the local bar. And what I found out after working with him for like 2 years is when he was going through his training journeys, he would go to the bartender at the start of the night, give him a $10 note and say, "Hey, whenever I order I think we used to order like double gin and sodas or something like that, something silly." He said, "Can you just give me a soda?" Paid $10 at the start of the night. All night he was sober and drinking what he wanted, but he still got that socializing. So that type of thing. Same thing with beer. You can sort of say, if you're a big beer drinker, maybe what I'll go down is get some mid-strength beer. That won't affect me so much. Or maybe I can get some zero alcohol beers. They're getting much, much, much more popular. Maybe not super delicious, but they can go a long way. On top of that, the next step up, there's also a lot of bars which will stock cans of water, where you basically get a can which looks like a beer, but it's just got soda water in it. It'll cost you a little bit of money, but again, you can sort of think about this. And then finally, the typical one, just drinking a glass of water in between each drink. All of that type of stuff, very, very, very simple, but it can definitely significantly reduce the impact of a night out, which will affect you on the following up days, and can help you feel a little bit better, and can also help you navigate that social scenario a little bit better. So hopefully that helps. So, with that being said, I think my internet is back working now, so hopefully the stream quality is a little bit better. I've got one more question I want to cover before moving forward. If anyone watching live does have any questions that they want me to cover, feel free to plug it in the chat. I'm happy to cover anything you want. But the last one, it's not really a particular question, but it's more a situation that's come up about 4 times in the last maybe 3 weeks. So I definitely want to talk about it. And basically, the situation was a person was training for hiking or training for a particular target, whatever it may be. And they also have a simultaneous weight loss target. But simultaneously, they're aware they have a bit of a history in regards to swings of energy. They're aware for one reason or another, whether it's a medical history, personal history, stressful time of life, or whatever it may be, they're aware that their energy goes up and down. And they've sort of said to us, look, that is a priority. I don't want to make sure my energy isn't affected. But they've also said, I'm really keen to lose a little bit of weight. And if you do sound familiar in this situation, it's something you really, really, really want to pay attention to. Because if you're going through a weight loss journey, balancing that out and your energy levels, it is a very delicate balance. And it's something you want to pay attention to. Because by definition, weight loss is essentially reducing the amount of fuel which is available to the body. If we are wanting to lose weight, we essentially need to consume less energy than the body needs. By very, very, very definition, we are already minimizing the fuel and minimizing the intake that the body really wants. And even on the most mild weight loss journeys, energy can be impacted. And if we're looking at, I already have a history of ups and downs of energy, it's something very, very, very worthwhile paying attention to. If you're concerned about energy, you need to take this seriously. I could talk about this for a long, 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 long time, but I'm going to just jot down a few very important things. Number one, if you're going down this route, if you're going through a weight loss target, you're aware of energy, number one, please know what you're doing and be intentional. In the sense that a lot of people, when they approach weight loss journeys, they're just like, hey, I'm just going to reduce a bunch of food and see what happens. And if you don't have energy issues, this isn't a big deal. You can test, you can trial, you can guess, you can see what works for you, whatever it may be. If you have a history of energy issues, you want to be a bit more intentional on that. You don't want to guess. You don't want to sort of just take a stab in the dark around what you're doing with your nutrition. Because if you end up eating way not enough and way less than you really need, yes, it may help with the energy, but it'll probably put a big risk of just crash. Probably will help with your weight loss, but it may put a big risk of you just crashing with your energy. So don't guess, have a plan. Work with a plan, stick with a plan, track the plan. If you don't know how to put together a plan, you don't know how to sort of figure things out, whatever it may be, this is a massive sign saying you want to work with a professional. You want to talk to someone who can sit down, figure out what you need to be aiming for in regards to how much food. Figure out what specific plan is going to work around your situation, your life, and your history, and teach you how you can actually track this to make sure, number one, you're sticking with the plan, and number two, you're not going too low or too high or whatever it may be. So if you don't know what you're doing, probably worthwhile working with a professional. Number two, very, very important, is avoid quick weight loss approaches. Last thing you want to do is if you have a history of ups and downs with energy, going on some crash diet where they promise you to lose a huge amount of kilos, a huge amount of pounds in a short amount of time. Those crash diets can definitely work, but they will impact your energy significantly. And you need to be aware of it. If you have a history of swings of energy, you want something milder. You want something a bit more steady. You don't want something dramatic. If someone is talking to you and they're saying you're going to lose a huge amount of weight in a short amount of time, maybe not a great approach to you. General rule of thumb is what I mean by mild is if someone's saying, hey, you're going to lose, it's generally like half a kilo a week is a realistic approach. It obviously changes from person to person, but if it's any quicker than half a kilo a week, you know what? You may need to consider it. Next up, avoid majorly restrictive diets. Meaning, if you have a history of ups and downs of energy, and someone says to you, okay, all of a sudden, you need to cut out all of this food, you need to cut out entire food groups, you need to cut out entire things, or whatever it may be, this may be a little bit tricky because if we're completely restricting certain things that we're used to, they may impact your energy. For example, I have a client that I've been working with recently who in a similar situation to this, and the person they were working with said, "Hey, we are going to go keto. That's our approach. We're going to completely take away all carbohydrates out of the body." Realistically, keto may work for weight loss. I wouldn't sort of say it's the best way, but it can work. But one thing you need to be aware about with keto is, even if you do it perfectly, there's going to be a period of 2 weeks or so where your energy is significantly impacted, where you feel gross, where you feel nasty, where you can't perform an exercise and this and that. So this particular person's saying, hey, you have a major history in ups and downs in energy. This is tricky, but we're going to go keto just for weight loss. A little bit tricky. So avoid majorly restrictive diets. And on top of that, if you're going down this route, you need to make sure, okay, I am aware my energy is going to be slightly impacted in one way or another. So what can I support myself to make sure it's not massively up and down? Make sure you're supporting your sleep, and supporting your stress, supporting your hydration, making good nutrition choices even around the weight loss things, making sure we're getting plenty of veggies and fruit and yada, yada, yada. And also just be aware that training intensities and volumes will probably need to be adaptable because you're going to be going on a journey with your weight loss, with your energy, where hopefully we're just doing little waves here and there, maybe periods where the energy begins to dip and you're like, hey, I don't want to give up my weight loss, so therefore I need to adjust what I'm doing with my training. All of this needs to be considered. So ultimately, I know I just rushed through a bunch of stuff there, but if you find yourself in this situation, you're training for something, you want a bit of weight loss, you're aware that you have a history of ups and downs with energy, Be very intentional about it. Don't get yourself in a situation where you just run yourself into the ground, you start feeling nasty, you start beating yourself up and this and that, because we don't really want it. It is doable, but you need to be intentional. So, with that being said, those are the questions that I have had sent through prior to this. And it doesn't look like anything else has come through live. So, I may wrap it up there and go actually get a little bit of lunch. So, I will sort of say for anyone watching live, if you do have any questions in the future, or anyone watching in the future has any questions, feel free to reach out to me, send them over. I'll cover them on the next live stream. I won't be running my stream on Friday as usual, but I'll be back in action this time next week to cover anything that's coming up. So for everyone watching live, I hope you have a lovely, lovely day. And for anyone watching in the future, hope you